Well, I've got a few minutes after the top of the hour, so we will kick off our meetup for this month. So, welcome to Agile Games Twin Cities for November. I'm pleased to introduce Nick Yingling. Nick's an Agile coach from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He came across tactical decision games and the case method learning approach late last year, and he's been adapting those into role-based Agile scenarios. He's got a bonus fact for us from a Twin Cities connection. I'm going to share my screen really quick. Nick had the chance to meet local celebrity Bullseye the dog, which is Target's mascot, when he worked at a fancy hotel a few years back. So nice Twin Cities connection. Nick, how you doing?
Pretty good.
Good. It's all yours. We're excited to learn more about Agile Decision Games.
Awesome. Let me start sharing. And kick off the slideshow here. So, hi, everybody. I'm Nick. Great to meet you, and thank you for spending your time with me this morning. I'm going to do some Agile Decision Games for you. These are kind of like D&D campaigns, but you are all the same character, and you all get to work on the same problem. So, I'm going to present the group with a scenario of more or less, complete information. And one of the things I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to cold call on you throughout all of this. So really put you on the spot and make you think. But for safety's sake, you can also just say pass. So give yourself just a moment to think, though. So, you play the game, right? It will jam you up sometimes. So that's part of what a difficult decision will do to you in real life. And that's why we practice it here. And again, there's no right or wrong answer, only your answer. So you're not competing with anyone else here to come up with the exact right thing or outshine anyone. In fact, you actually kind of play off each other's decisions. Remember, though, think about yourself as the protagonist in this thing. So you might slip into saying, well, if I were the product owner in this, no, you are the product owner. And we'll get into it here. So first one, kind of timely here because we are after Halloween and you are seeing Christmas stuff everywhere. This one is Merry Scrumsmas. You are the Scrum Master on a team that's been working together for 8 months at a large financial institution. Also, I'll pause here. Feel free to take notes. You somewhat recently became a Scrum Master just a year and a half ago, and you've worked in that role briefly at a startup, alongside many other hats that you wore while you're there. So including yourself, there are 7 people on the team. The developers that you work with, they've all got varying levels of experience and time working at the org. Fortunately, they're all pretty cross-functional in their skill sets, and they benefit from the deeper knowledge of that one team member who's an anchor of sorts. They've been there for 15 plus years. Now, the product owner, they're both new to the role and new to the team. They've already been at the organization for 5+ years in sort of a BA role. And when this new team was being formed, he was promoted and received his PO certification shortly beforehand. My coffee is really kicking in, so if I'm talking fast and reading, I'll dial it in. But you went away for Thanksgiving, you came back, and it was a little bit weird planning around Thanksgiving. And you're like, wonder what the calendar has in store for me next month. So today is December 4th, and you've got your team retro and your team sprint planning coming up on the 6th. And you're like, oh yeah, the holidays were a pain last time. I should look ahead on the calendar. And you're seeing, oh, okay, Christmas Eve is the 24th and Christmas Day is the 25th. That might throw things off a bit. I should really look at how other people are scheduling things and what days the company is observing. So you go ahead and you get into the SharePoint and you find that information. Oh, okay. So they're observing the 26th and the 2nd there. That's another fine thing. But wondering what the availability of people on the team will be. So you start to message them on Teams or whatever. And your product owner says they're taking a big chunk of time off from the 18th until the 2nd, coming back right into a planning session and a retro. That might be a pain. I wonder what the rest of the team is doing. So you hit them up, chase them down, herd the cats, and get their availability for vacations and all that. And they are taking off from the 18th all the way through the 5th. I just put down here various developers because they weren't all consistently going to be out at the same time. Some taking it before the holidays, some taking it after. And your lead developer is going to just take the whole big chunk of that off. So their wisdom is going to be missing. So I wrote down some names here. You've got a difficult decision to make because although the team's kind of new, you know that you should ask the team what their preference is, but they might just kick that ball back over to you and say, I don't know, you're the scrum master. You tell us what would work. You know that you want to make sure that all the scrum events are still observed. And from there, you need to make a decision. So, David, what are you going to do here?
I think it's a good opportunity for the team to practice without some of the traditional people that are in there. So I would probably stretch one of them. I would move the second one back a week because coming right back from a 3-day break, I don't think that it's going to be any value. No one's going to be in the right mindset. We're going to spend more time catching up. So that one on the 3rd, I would move to the 10th.
Okay.
And then even with the product owner out and the developers on vacation, I'd let the team run without them for a couple of weeks or a couple of them sessions and see what they do and identify maybe there's things that we realize are missing when that person's not there that we need to share knowledge on. It's a good opportunity for us to see where we're at and if there's full common knowledge across the team or not.
What are some downsides you would want to be on the lookout for, though?
I'd be watching out for hesitancy, people that feel uncomfortable and scared to make decisions without the people that they're used to having in there. It's depending on the work. If there's very little risk in doing something wrong for 2 weeks, wrong in quotes, I'm air quoting, but I don't have my video on, so you can't see me. It might be worth it to see what's going on. If we go the wrong way for one little extended sprint, is that the end of the world? I would say no, but I'm a risk taker and I like to just try stuff and see what happens.
Okay, thank you. I'll move them back here and we will ask Deb, what are you going to do here?
I kind of agree with what David was saying. I mean, there's with a lot of people out on, from the 18th through the at least through the 2nd. If you move that second one from the 3rd to the 10th, I do agree with what David was saying. You're not going to get a whole lot of, conversation and stuff going on with people being out and just coming in. But also keeping the one on the 20th, you're going to allow people who may not have a chance to speak because other people have been taken over, giving them a chance to have that conversation and hear their voices. Maybe they would have a chance to speak up. But also just, the people who are not on vacation are still going to be working and they still need to have some direction and something to work on. So having that retro and sprint planning and giving them the opportunity to continue to work is still important.
Okay, of course, the team collaborates with the product owner to come up with the goal for the sprint. So how are they going to sort of get that initial guidance for this one on the 20th?
Well, they've already been planning kind of before, and just because of the product owner is on vacation, they've already kind of set up a rhythm of what's going on. I believe that they can kind of make some of the follow through with what's been going on in the past, kind of follow through with different things. With a lot of the team being gone, there's not going to be a big changes coming through, at least, with where I'm working at US Bank, there's not a lot of big changes going on in the month of December anyway. So there could be just, smaller things that don't require a lot of input from the product manager or product owner to, provide them a lot of guidance to go on. That could be stuff pulled in from the backlog that has already been refined and doesn't, they don't need to have a lot of the guidance from the product owner because it's already been there.
Okay, great. Move them back. Let's see, we've got Tim, a little bit of a different question. What are we missing here?
Well, I guess we're missing feedback directly. If we have that sprint in the middle on the 20th, or that, where we started, we don't have the product owner there to, to guide, set the goal, things like that. So I would delete that one altogether. I would just extend the sprint to a month just for December, right? Just for Scrummas. And I'd probably bump the, I think having the retro and planning on the 3rd might be fine, right? That beginning of the year, just start right there. Everyone's back from vacation. So all the planning, all the goal setting and everything could be done early in December to extend through the whole month of December.
Okay.
So I think that just for this time only, and then at the 3rd or at the 6th, when we plan, or even prior to that, maybe it's sometime in the last week of November, if we're working directly with customers or whoever our clients are at this point, just let them know that, hey, December, we're going to just, you're not going to see 2 sprints, you're just going to see 1. And so you'll see delivery or whatever we set as a goal at the end will be at the beginning of the following year, like beginning of January.
I'll bring you back to reminding that we are on the 4th of December now, and you're
Okay.
only now catching wind of this.
Okay, then I would say either on the 4th, 5th, or even the 6th. That's when you communicate directly with your customers to let them know that we're going to extend this sprint to a month instead of 2 weeks.
Very good. Let me get that all back. Zishan, what are you going to do here?
Hi, hello everyone. Sorry, I joined call a little late, and after that I got some interruption, I was unable to understand the situation, but whatever I think, there is a scenario where we have some folks not available on a certain agile ceremony, is that right?
Yes.
All right. So sometimes we have similar type of situation in our teams because everyone has their own plans, and there is nothing really impacting the team a lot if we know everything in advance. So for example, what I would do, I will have a calendar on, like in the form of spreadsheet, where I will let everyone know, can you please put on your out of office time, even planned or even some maybe unplanned. It will help me in two ways. Number one, I will be able to know what is exactly the team capacity, how much we can load for this sprint, number one. And number two, it will also help me to plan something in advance to see how many critical team members will be out of office. If somebody is really out of office and we really don't have a good backup plan, let's assume in that case we can do some plan in advance, but I would not extend this sprint. It will continue as it is.
Okay, so keep the one on the 20th and basically kind of do a lot more metrics and capacity planning to see what might be possible. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there anything that we're missing here?
What is our release cadence?
Not really specified in this scenario.
So I feel like that might impact the customers depending on if they expect releases or not. Are we a continuous release? Are we every 2-week release? Does our sprints affect our release cadence? Because I feel like knowing that would be a potential.
Okay, so I'll kick it over to you, Katrina. What's going to be your choice here then?
My choice. So for one thing, I will say this, my teams know better than to make me do a decision on their work. So they wouldn't put this on me to defer. But that being said, I would give them options. So what I would do is first I talk to my product owner, talk about what work is it that has to be done during those weeks that they're gone. Cause I know we're a financial institution, so I'd like to think it's nothing drastic, but I know, for example, I work in tax software, so the end of December is our oh god why season. We have a lot of production support and stuff like that, so kind of depends on that. Also, do we have production support? Kind of understanding our work in general. So first I'd have an understanding of what work needs to be done during this time. Also, if my product owner has a backup, if there are going to be potential emergencies, is there something who's going to make that decision? Is it going to be the team? Who's it going to be? Make sure that the team understands, where is it we're going to go for it. And then I would bring all this information to my team. And I know that sounds, you kind of said that they would push back on me, but I would really like to think that they wouldn't. I'd be like, here's the days that everybody's gone. Here are some options. We don't have a lot on our plate in terms of what the product owner needs. Does it make sense to get rid of that planning and retro on the 20th? I would say no retro. I wouldn't get rid of the retro, but the planning on the 20th and just have one long sprint. Otherwise, if our release cadence is dependent on those days, obviously I wouldn't necessarily move it. I would instead see how the team wants to attack it, who wants to take what potential roles. It sounded like this team is cross-functional, so that's good. If people are gone, it doesn't sound like we're going to be like completely destroyed if that's the case. But if there's nothing really going on, maybe this is a great time for us to start doing more learning and knowledge share and take this time to like really focus on our own functionality as a team. Is there certain things that, because they said that we have one person who's a veteran, right? Like the 15-year veteran. Are there certain things that this person knows and does better than everybody else that maybe they can go through together with the team? I would definitely encourage that if we have all this, not necessarily downtime, but like kind of weirdness time, maybe that's what we do during this time instead of focusing on client-facing work. It really kind of just depends on what the work is in my mind. But again, I would let the team decide.
Okay, so if the doldrums are basically going to be a constraint, lean into the constraint and see how you can maximize it. Okay, so I did this on the screen here. I just put options all over the place and to see what the team jumps on. Anything that, did I ask you or Zishan before? What are we missing here?
Let me think about it. Sorry, I doesn't know, but I will get back to you.
You joined late. I did specify at the beginning, you have the option to pass at any time.
Yeah, I would pass.
Great. Let's see, time check right there. Okay, we're good for time. Is it Angel or Angel?
It is Angel.
Angel, please tell us your decision here.
I would absolutely do what Katrina said. The only thing I would add to Katrina's approach would be to consider tech debt. I think she might have said that, but I love it's an opportunity for the team to skill up in areas to help make future sprints go well. And then eliminating any tech debt that teams can get working on. But I would do all the things she's doing, talk to the product owner in advance, identify and prioritize stuff fully for the month, have a schedule so people can see where they can connect and who they can connect with, and then let it be on them on how they win. I would lean towards leaving the cadence as is, and then let them self-organize around it.
Keeping the pace. Okay. With this being a financial institution, is there anything that might be a gotcha?
Oh, yes. Freeze. A lot of financial institutions have freeze periods, which actually encourages the opportunity for doing learning, and because you're not going to be able to release.
Right. They don't want to mess around with the banking systems during that holiday shopping time.
Correct.
Really leading the witness.
I didn't realize it was a financial institution.
Let's see. One of our hosts, Marissa, what's your decision?
At this point, I'm honestly not sure if everybody's covered everything else that I think I would have thought about as far as moving it or things to consider. As far as leaning on what you like, leaning on the team to kind of make their best, I don't want to say guesses, but best plan based on what they know and what they, based on the roadmaps or the vision that they've seen. They can still rally around a sprint goal, still have conversations regarding those retros, the tech debt. I guess I don't really have anything else that I would do differently. So I guess that's it for me, or I'll just have to say pass.
Okay, great. Thank you. And doing a time check, I'll move us back to this screen here and tell you the decisions that we made. And that was actually the calendar view for this year. So if you haven't started thinking about your end of the year plans, I just gave you a leg up. What we forgot to mention on some of these, though, is what are your plans as the Scrum Master? You are such absolute servant leaders, you didn't even think about your own vacation. How about that? But what are going to be the sprint reviews? Are you going to be demo anything? Is there going to be a backlog refinement that you need to slot in there? Other meetings that just aren't defined in the Scrum Guide? Did that unofficial half day where the motivation just sort of slips away at 2 p.m. and people become scarce? Is there a holiday party? Those sorts of things. Your dependencies upstream or downstream, or other teams relying on you? Do you need to work with them and sort of just align everything there? And I think, Katrina, what's really getting at is what's the morale, the motivation, or enthusiasm of people who are stuck working there? I remember being in my 20s and not having the vacation time, but no one else was around. So it was kind of like, you want me to do what? Sure, man, I will.
For you.
Here's the decision we came up with, though. We're doing a pub retrospective on the 15th, getting people out of the office because that's kind of leaning into the skid there. They're going to want to be out of the office anyway. So we'll just go outside and do something at like a bar and just see how it's going, sort of end of the year wrap up. And we did our team sprint planning on the 15th just to cover that gap all the way through. It made it sort of a not quite 3-week sprint, but with underneath that, month timeline for the sprint. There is no right or wrong answer. This is just kind of the reveal of what happened. So like a mystery reveal. Not saying this is what you must do, but it kind of tickles that itch of curiosity of like, okay, that's one way of doing it. So I'll talk a bit more about decision forcing cases and how I learned about them. I'm connected with some people in the Marines, and this is the United States Marine War College. They do these decision forcing cases based on actual combat case studies. And so they'll have a map or something like this, and it makes sense to them. I don't understand all the different battalion and units, but it's kind of easy for you to understand something in that retrospective, knowing what happened in the battle and here's what should have been done. But if you're the commander on the field faced with that tough decision, you can't hem and haw as much. You kind of have to make that decision. And part of making difficult decisions, though, is practicing making decisions. So putting people in these weird scenarios for the first time, cold calling on them, putting them on the spot and saying, okay, well, there were no stakes this time around, but you didn't freeze up. You thought it through and you examined your decision making as you went through it. So it's kind of like a game of D&D, but rather than the fantasy elements, it's a real world problem or decision. And it's this participatory decision discussion based way of learning where we all gain skills in our critical thinking and group dynamics. And so if you were a Scrum Master or you weren't, you got to think like what a Scrum Master would consider in these situations. And I already mentioned that last point. So I'll move us on to our next one here. Lift and shift. Getting radio voice here in the morning. You're the product owner. Oh, the recording thing, get out of there. On a team that's been working together for over 3 years at a large organization. You're the PO for about 7 years. You've dealt as a developer, and you even did a short stint as a Scrum Master and some other jobs. Including yourself, there's 6 people on the team, and due to the nature of the product that they support and the time that the team's been together, they're essentially one of those durable teams that you hear about. They've had a solid performance output, and what's more, they've gained that reputation throughout the organization as being the go-to team of what a high-performing Agile team looks like. Earlier this year, your organization signed a deal with Amazon Web Services. Nearly all the products and services enterprise-wide were directed to migrate their on-prem solutions to cloud, including your team's product. Now, due to your team's past performance and reputation, they were tapped as one of the initial teams to start the migration. First through the minefield on this fun migration stuff. You're the product owner. Here's the sprint for burn down after 2 months. Alexis, what's jumping out at you?
The first line, not the first, but the red line. I'm just trying to figure out, like, why is it going straight? That's what pops out at me. Because the other one is burning down completely, but the red one, there was a lot of scope increase.
A little bit of jump up here, yeah.
Yeah. That's all I have to say. I don't know.
Great. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Carrie, what's jumping out at you? Carrie, you may be on mute.
Carrie dropped. She had to drop off.
Okay,
for another
sorry.
meeting. Yeah. No worries.
Tim, what are you seeing here?
I see this team must be that must be the December sprint that, no, I see too much work, right? So if the gray line represents the ideal burn down and the red represents reality, then we just need to start simplifying and get rid, if the goal is to be more like the burn down ideal, then we need to start removing some stuff and letting people know that we can't, or maybe we learn that it was harder than we thought. Moving stuff over doesn't mean, just copy. You've got to test and regressive and all that kind of stuff. It turns out to be a little harder than we thought it was. And this red line represents the proof of that. So then we need to make decisions on, hey, how can we simplify these sprint or the next sprint so that we can get back a little closer to target?
Great, thank you. You're a product owner. You used to be a Scrum Master, so you know how to go and find your own information radiators. And maybe you still think burn downs are a good indicator of trends. So you go back through and you look up some of the past sprints since this whole effort kicked off, and here's what you're seeing. Sprint 1, you knew it would be weird and difficult, and there was kind of a lot of spikiness to figure out. You also kind of used that as an opportunity to handle some tech debt that was lying around. Since it was a migration, you could just knock some of that out. And it was a little bit plateaued, but then it all just fell off a cliff afterwards. Sprint 2, things got a little bit of rubber meeting the road, and you were kind of getting stuff done, but then something would jump up, and then it just got stuck again. Of course, these gray bits here, that's the weekend. Sorry for leaving that out. But Sprint 3 seemed like it was back on track, more or less. You got those resources from the migration team to help you out, and you're wrapping your head around it. Give you another moment to look at these three. Yeah, but things are looking rough here at Sprint 4. So you're concerned in kind of several ways. Of course, yeah, it does seem like you're stuck, but how do you help the team stop the bleeding in the upcoming sprints? How's that kind of affecting the team morale, and what can you help to do as the product owner for them? How's this affecting the team's reputation with leadership throughout the organization and in their own eyes? Chris, what are you going to do?
A couple things that I was noticing looking at that sprint is they've got a lot of work, and in every sprint they've either brought in more work or they've rescoped the work that's there, right? Like the red lines going up are some change in scope. So it's either they had something that they thought was a 5 and now it's a 13 and that's why it's going up, or they're identifying new work that needs to be done and pulling that in. That feels like a problem to me. Like if we're identifying new work, great, but like why are we pulling that into the current sprint as opposed to making that happen in the future for a future sprint? I would be inclined at the end of this sprint to have them commit to like maybe 15 story points, or however you're measuring this, instead of the 40 or 35 or 60 that they've done in the past. Something's different here. We can't use our same run rate that we've used historically. And we've got to figure out what is our new run rate on this new thing that none of us know how to do. I may even go as far as saying, like, sprint 5, I've got one story for you. It's this one thing. It's the first thing, most important thing that needs to be done. I'm not giving you another story until that one's done. Like, show me that you can deliver that. If it takes you the whole sprint, fine. If it takes you a day, great. I'll add in something else. But like, show me that you can deliver something before I try to give you too much stuff all at once. This feels like a case of like too much stuff happening all the time and not enough getting done.
Adding more weight on top of the clog is not unclogging it.
Yep, pretty much.
Who else would you talk to?
I'd be interested in talking with the other leaders about like what is the real goal here, and understanding, like, is there, why are we doing this a little bit more? Like, that's not been made super clear why we need to switch off of on-prem, and knowing that we've got a really strong team and they're struggling this much. How much cost is there going to be for all the other teams to have to go through this transition also? And is whatever savings or whatever benefits we're expecting to get from AWS worth all of this spin and focus away from delivering incremental value? This is not something that delivers value to our customers, typically going from an on-prem solution to an AWS. This is a cost savings thing only. So I'd be concerned that we're missing the ability to deliver more value to our customer for the sake of some kind of expense gains.
Okay, thank you. Alexis, hand up. What are you going to do as the product owner here?
Well, I think in retro or in review or whatever it is to just kind of set that tone. I know it's coming from like a product owner perspective more so than the Scrum Master, but like kind of speaking to the Scrum Master to kind of advocate for the team, because there's this expectation that the team is like great and wonderful, whatever, but advocating for the team that like anything can happen in this sort of environment, to not be so heavy on that team, because I know like they've been doing good, but like things can happen for them not to do good type stuff. So letting the organization know to kind of not be so harsh on this particular team.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could kind of alleviate some sort of pressure on the team to do good every single sprint. But yeah.
Okay, so listen to your team Scrum Master with their pulse check on the team's morale and what they're going through, and then pass that along up to leadership. All right, Femi, you are the product owner here. What are you going to do in this situation?
I'm learning from you guys.
Okay.
So I'm just here to learn.
Okay, I'll let you pass if that's where you're going.
Thank you.
Sure. Amber, you're the product owner. What's going to be your decision? Did Amber drop? Okay. Beth, what are you going to do?
So it's kind of funny because we've been going through something similar this year anyway. I think one of the biggest problems that we had while going through this was just trying to stay at that same level and taking in too much work, trying to stay with what we were doing before, plus adding on all the migration. So basically it's having to talk with leadership and say, we have to take a step back, slow down, and just take in what we can for the migration part. Obviously still doing the BAU, or at least the high priority BAU, but yeah, that's pretty much what we're going to have to do, is talking to leadership and working as the team to say we have to slow down.
All right, Beth, as the product owner in this situation, you're telling leadership we need to pause new development. What do you think they might say?
Yeah, that went well. That was a little bit of sarcasm. They understood. And the thing is, ours was such a high level. Everything was changing. Everything was priority. We had to focus on what were the number one priorities, and just work on that work. Obviously, anything that is regulatory, we had to do. And they understood that, but we put a pause on pretty much everything that wasn't for the new migration.
Thank you. Jump back here just a few slides. You're the product owner on this team that's a bunch of high flyers. You didn't just land there on accident, did you? You might have a little bit of political clout with them. Let's see. I got my list of people here. David, what are you going to do?
If I'm being honest, I'm a product owner. I'm going to be frustrated first. I'm going to see that and I'm going to go, what is going on? I'm going to ask them. I'm just going to ask directly the team, what do they think's happening? I'm not going to draw too many conclusions on my own until I just show them it and say, what's the scoop here? And then after that conversation, I'm going to try to say, what's the smallest chunk of something we can complete that's realistic? Like, instead of trying to fill the entire sprint, let's try to make progress on something. Seeing that stagnate and even increase makes me question whether or not we define things well enough up front. And I don't like to do all that work up front, but if we're learning more in the sprint than we knew going into it, and it continues to balloon that way, I'm going to ask them, what's a small chunk we can do? And I might even shorten the sprints. I might say, let's try to see what we can do in a week instead of 2. Let's try to see what we can do in a couple of days instead of that. I want to shorten the variance and opportunity for this to balloon so we can stay on the track and stay focused. As a product owner, and I'm gonna maybe ask the team what they would want to do. If there was one thing they could do right now, what would they do to it? I might not understand the work as well as they do. So yeah, I would probably reduce the length of cadence. If things keep ballooning, the best way that I see that we can see what's happening is to shorten that and see what we're seeing over the course of a smaller time frame instead of letting it extend, and then go from there.
So the team is learning as they go along this whole Amazon Web Services stuff with Terraforms and Lambdas. And forgive me for saying they're building the plane while it's in flight.
Yeah, I mean, and it's good to learn as you go, but if you're only learning and never making progress, then we got to recalculate realistic expectations of when we think we're going to be completed on these type of things. I'm assuming there's some conversations around when will this be done, because we can't just ignore the fact that that's going to happen. Being able to share at the end of this, well, what have we learned? Maybe not just capturing only what have we completed, but what have we learned? So as a product owner, I can communicate that out to other teams and our stakeholders, so they know we're not just sitting and spinning our wheels. We're probably discovering new things as we go, and we can share that as well.
Thank you. Marissa, what are you going to do?
So I've heard people talk about like taking a pause or kind of limiting how much we're taking in. And one of the things that I was sitting here thinking about is how much of these items are carried over from sprint to sprint. So I know it's typical. It's not uncommon if teams if they're very close to finishing an item, that they'll just carry it over to the next sprint and they'll say, like, I have a day's worth of work left. So I'd be curious if that's part of what's causing the high number of items that they're committing to at the beginning of the sprint if they think that they just have a little bit of leftover. So I'd really like to talk with the team and kind of see get their thoughts on what's happening here, if it's a lot of carryover work and we're just piling on top of that, or what's happening here when we're going into planning. Why are we committing to so much? How is that commitment coming to be? And then thinking about how we can scale that back again, like others have said, just taking a pause or maybe just really reducing what we're committing to and just focusing on a couple items. So maybe we can take, if it's something that's new to us, swarming together and really pair programming or just working more closely together so we can learn this new environment together and grow stronger. So that's something I would consider.
What are you going to say to leadership?
I would try to be honest, but I would be very careful with how I think about my words. But sharing, because I wouldn't want them to think less of the team, but being honest about this was new work to us. There were a lot of unknowns going into it, so we thought through the items the best to our ability based on what we know. And now that we're peeling back the layers and we're diving into it more, we're learning new things. We're learning that we might have to do a little bit more, or the work is more complex, or maybe we don't have the tools or the skills needed. So we're uncovering all of that and we are learning that we need to do these things. So it might just take a little bit longer than originally anticipated, but we're learning and we're growing. So that's probably what I would share.
Great, thank you. Have I missed anyone? I think I've got everyone. Did anyone pass earlier that I can return to?
I haven't gone on this one either.
Please, Katrina, sorry, I don't have the full view here while I'm sharing.
You're totally fine. Okay, so for me, burn downs don't tell you what's going on, they just tell you that something is going on. So a couple different things I see on this. Why am I, the product owner, putting in more points when they're not getting things done? In my mind, if my team, if there is something that's emergency that has to go in, I need to make the decision of what needs to come out to replace that, which I'm clearly not doing. So I'm failing my team in that way. This also tells me that we are failing our team in some way because this is a high performing team, right? And now all of a sudden they're not. So what have we done potentially in our system that has made it so that we have failed them? So I would reach out to my Scrum Master. Is my Scrum Master a good Scrum Master, or are they kind of or what are they?
I believe so. This is a high performing team, so it takes everyone to tango.
Okay, so I'd like to think my Scrum Master has a decent idea of what's going on here, right? Obviously, again, I haven't been coached on not allowing my team to put more work in, so I need to make sure I'm fixing that because it looks like it's a trend, right? I've done that more than once, where I put more work in instead of taking work out to replace it. As we said, as I think you said earlier, adding more stuff on top of the clog isn't going to help fix it. But then also retro, if we're not having this conversation already, which I'd like to think we are, have a conversation around what has changed. How did we fail? You know, how did we fail the team? Because again, the team itself, I don't think is the failure in this situation because they historically have operated very well. So something in the environment has changed, which is obviously probably the work. So I would get a pulse from them on what is it that has changed. Did we allow them enough time and energy to actually learn this? Or did we just kind of pile it up on top of our original work without really, you know, because they're such a high performing team, like they'll be able to handle it. You know, what is it that they're struggling with, and having a good understanding of that first, and then making adjustments accordingly. So if their answer is like, hey, we haven't had time to learn this, or we only have one person who's actually truly figured it out and they're trying to struggle through it all by themselves, does it mean I need to take a step back as a product owner and go to leadership and be like, hey, if you really need this to be the case with AWS, I need to be able to take away all of our enhancements and things like that. My team maybe needs a sprint or two to really understand AWS and what we're doing, and you know, getting that pulse from the team on what works best for them to get the work done quicker so that we can get back to our usual cadence. Again, working my Scrum Master to understand the whys behind it and making sure that they're facilitating and getting that information out of the team as well, I think is really important here, because yeah, that's what I say with this, but
Okay.
there's a lot of complicated pieces, I think, to it.
If it was easy, everybody'd be doing it.
Right. So you have to understand what the pieces are in order to even move forward. You know, maybe somebody has been sick for like the only person who knows AWS has been sick for the last like 2 weeks. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm just saying, like, clearly from my perspective as a product owner, obviously I have failed the team in putting more work on them than what they can handle or committed to in the first place.
Okay, getting self-reflective a bit about your performance as the product owner for them, tapping into the Scrum Master to see what's actually happening with the team and how are they feeling about things. Also going to leadership and saying, yes, this is difficult as you predicted, and here's why. Here are some lessons learned. Angel, I saw your hand go up. What are you going to do?
I think I'm going to stop going after Katrina because I really agree with what she says, and I had the same perspective. There is a high-performing team. I, as a product owner, would feel like I'm failing my team. I would have compassion trying to understand what it is that is making them struggle. One thing that stands out to me is, do they understand the work? Is the work broken down in the right way? Are the stories are the stories correct? Do we have the right skills on the team? You know, did we introduce something that the skill, you know, the cross skill set, it doesn't exist. Those are the type of things I think Katrina nailed it.
Right. Thank you. Tim, you're the product owner.
Well, I suspect since this is the go-to team, they're probably also doing other work, right? The work that they normally do. And just because that's now become a habit, let's just give it to Katrina's team and, you know, they'll knock it out of the park. Maybe not realizing that they're also doing this AWS project too. So I think there may be some effort to just go look, you know, like was mentioned earlier, we're only going to focus on this one task. I think it was David maybe, or somebody mentioned, you know, to feel like what success feels like, maybe just minimizing the stories down to one, you know, just to feel, you know, get that kind of dopamine hit as a team that we can finish some stuff. The other thing about reputation I wanted to mention is I think because this is a trusted team and it's hard for this team, I think that tells the story more than this team is failing. You know, if this team can't do it, then the other teams are going to really have a hard time doing it too. So this is a harder project. Maybe we bring in, you know, more help, more consulting, or we just slow this whole thing down. But we can't keep piling on because obviously it's not, you know, we now have 4 sprints of proof that, you know, we need to minimize and simplify a little more.
Thank you. Anyone else? I have 9 minutes left, so I'll move us on to telling you what actually happened here. So one thing we caught on to was that, yeah, we did have some performance here, getting closer to the trend line at the end of a sprint, and then it would plateau. This one in sprint 3 would kind of come back to that a little bit, but still a little bit stuck, and then plateau again here in sprint 4. So we would discover what was really stuck. And if we had like maybe 3-week sprints, we could have actually delivered on time, but it was just that the clock was against us here. So what we did with this team, and the product owner was on board with taking a few things out here and there. So as was touched on, we stopped, you know, adding to the pain, but we did sort of a dual track agile approach here, where instead of people saying, oh, we need all these spikes, we would say, okay, the first half of the sprint will be a bit more spiky, find out what you need, and then commit to saying, here's what we can do in the next week of it. And that brought things a little bit more in line. Of course, there was something here or there that would jump up, but we were able to get more stuff out the door. And taking timeframes into account, we sort of said, yeah, this has been 2 months of agony for us, but we're through most of the pain by now. So we took that in stride, and in about 3 more sprints, we were able to have the migration all completed. So We took that to leadership and you said, here's the lessons learned. You were right. This was tough. And we took that bloody nose that we got with everything and used that as sort of, here are our lessons learned. And we published a larger thing out there to say, yes, we were the go-to team and we took our lumps doing this. Here's what you should be on the lookout for. So we said we are the experts in dealing with this painful process. And that helped the team with their reputation and feeling like they still won something back at the end of the struggle. So here are some ways you can use these for teams. You know, just imagine that you're a product manager with all those conflicting strategic options, a product owner who, you know, can't make decisions. If you're coaching one of those guys, I mean, can you imagine a developer or an architect who can't choose an approach whenever there's just too much ambiguity? You create a situation where there is ambiguity and they can sort of reason their way through that. And the Scrum Master who has to deal with just about anything. But the benefits for everyone here, I hope you got to feel some of this as we were going through it. You uncover some of your own blind spots with what's going on. You learn from your teammates and how they all approach their decision-making. Oh, one person really cares about the timeline. One person really cares about the budget. And so what other people on the team think about when they make decisions, and you can start to think about what they would think about. But you also get better at asking the why. So it's comfortable now to say, oh, why do you think that? It's not like someone is attacking someone's, you know, train of thought. It's just, I'm curious. Why are you asking that? And so the whole team can come together and examine that. It's not like the product owner saying, we're doing this for this reason, don't question me, sort of thing. You get more comfortable with discussing those assumptions and risks, so they are not as, you know, terrifying for you. And hey, we just gained experience at being a product owner or being a Scrum Master in a weird situation, but we didn't have to go through that actually there whenever the chips were down. You can craft your own decision games, just sort of use your experience, you know, set the stage like I did, outline that scenario. Introduce the protagonist. You can go as in-depth with that as you want. I kind of kept it high level here. But if you know the people that you're working with or you're writing this for, you know, really kind of craft it to them and their situation. Just say, not a financial institution, but, you know, actually an energy supplier or, you know, some healthcare company and making apps or something. You know, you can really customize it to them and their situation. Then you present that problem and you prompt them to make the decision. The cold calling part can be pretty fun. Don't cold call on the product owner for the team. If it's a product owner decision that you're going for, you know, give them like a little bit of time to chill out and stew, because they're going to maybe influence the rest of the team just by virtue of their position. But then reveal the actual decision and outcome with them, satisfy that itch of being like, aha, here's what the actual thing was. And remember, it's not the right or wrong decision, just what happened. Like if you were reading a case study. Reflect together as a group afterwards and say, what was this case actually about? So if we jump back and I asked you, what is this really about? Well, you've got themes of team morale, team reputation, just delivery is what we're harping on. But what happens when you miss that delivery? What's the fallout there? So what's this case really about? There's so much more tied into it. And if you don't really have a lot of experiences or something to write up, go ahead and ask other people. They'll be flattered to tell their story. A lot of these things didn't happen in a vacuum. I just reached out to other people and said, hey, how's your Amazon Web Service migration going? And they go, oh, buddy, sit down. I will tell you. And then, you know, just use ChatGPT. Add some stuff in there. I selectively added some details to that first one about, you know, how many people were on the team. And sometimes that could be a red herring here and there, or sometimes can actually be an important point. There are some things, you know, like, of course, I could easily find out the team's velocity or something like that. It's just at the tip of my fingertips. And as you're presenting some of these, you'll get the same questions coming up. So just add those things in. Just remember to gamify it. Look up a couple videos about how to be a good dungeon master. That'll actually help you out in crafting some of these. Keep that bird's eye view of everything that's going on. The details do help, but keep it simple as well. Don't try and steer people towards one thing, but if you're getting the grasp that like, oh, someone is close to it, just give them a little nudge here or there with maybe one of your leading questions. That's all I've got for you today, everybody. I saw a bunch of things come into the chat, so I'm sorry if I missed anything to riff on. Otherwise, thank you so much. Any questions I can answer here at the very end?
I have a question.
Please.
Will the recording be available to us?
Yep. So I will publish that out. I publish all the recordings and a recap of each of the sessions on the Agile Games Twin Cities website. So feel free to check that out. I'll drop the link to the website in the chat. If you're on our mailing list, I also send out a recap and a link to the recap in an email every month.
Can I put my email in the chat or?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. If
Okay.
you want to put it in the chat or you want to send it in a direct message to me, I'll make sure you're on the list.
Thank you.
I'll leave you with this. If at the end of the year, as you're planning some of those team events and you're thinking, oh, I don't really want to get into a particular retrospective, maybe I'll let them play a game. There you go.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
This is good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks. And thanks
See
everybody
you
else.
guys.
We'll see you in December. I don't think we have a topic lined up yet. So if you've got a game that
Yeah.
you want to share, feel free to reach out.